All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm your host, Don Irvine, and joined by my co-host at a secret remote location, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yes, lots of fascists or semi-fascists out there these days, it seems. All right. Weather. Just briefly start off with the weather. We've got yet another weather event. Hurricane Ian. Now, I haven't checked in the last hour or so, but last time I did check, it was approaching category 5, so that's pretty darn strong winds. I mean, really once you get into category 2 and above, anyway, to me it's like those are pretty strong winds. I'm just thinking, sometimes we get winds of what, maybe 50, 60, 70
Yeah,
miles an hour, these wind gusts and things like this. But I mean, I just cannot imagine getting winds that are, when they're going over like 115 miles an hour and stuff like that. That has that can have devastating effects, and it has and probably will. It's in the Gulf Coast this time and working its way up. It's already given Havana fits. I mean, Cuba's already got a problem with their infrastructure and their electricity, their grid, and now they have to get yet another blackout, really, because of the storm.
yeah, they're really in trouble there. They
Yeah.
had bad. The
So it's
grid took a major hit in Cuba.
yeah,
So, yeah, they're talking about winds 130, 140 miles an hour. So, basically, when this happens, you board up everything. You sit in your house as low as you can, tucked down, and you hear this thing howling, and it never stops howling. And you're just sitting there wondering, like, which one of those is going to, like, break free the big limb in your yard and, bring death and destruction to your house. It's really stressful, and it goes on for a long time. And this one, I read just a little while ago that the entirety of Hurricane Charlie, which was a pretty severe hurricane, could fit inside the eye of Ian.
wow.
So, yeah, woo. So, if you're down there, I'm praying for those people. I understand our friends and cousins and whatnot in the Cajun Navy are already, making their way over to get ready to help. And a lot of them, have gone to Eastern Florida. Apparently, if you can get to Miami, you're safe. It's north of there and west of there. So, a lot of the people who are going to help are getting themselves to Miami and dealing with it from there. So prayers for those people. The other thing, a really disgusting thing about this is, the Democrats are really cheering for DeSantis to lose here, right? They want a lot of suffering if they can blame on him, his incompetence or whatever. What a thing! Just look at what politics is making us do, right? There was I guess Vindman's wife is on Twitter this morning cheering for DeSantis and to lose and to have things said rename it, call him different pronouns to make him mad, and president refused to talk to him, calls him a bunch of mayors in Florida but doesn't call the governor. The presidents talk to the governors at this point. They put that behind. I mean, Trump worked with Gavin Newsom and Mario Cuomo, and both of them came out after it and said, he did what he said he was going to do, gave us everything we needed, right? If Trump can work with them, then Biden can pick up the phone and call DeSantis. It's just ridiculous. They need to grow up down there.
Something, I like that. They need to grow up. I mean, this is, this is part of just a larger problem about politics. I mean, this is what has, I'm still staying up to date, more or less with what's going on in the world. That's why we do the show. Things that kind of keep me going. But by and large, politics, I'm really have soured on a lot of stuff. My term on the Republican Central Committee here in Montgomery County will come to an end in November. And I can't wait for that time to occur. I'm just letting the clock tick out, but I'm just not, I've lost my enthusiasm for what can be done and what's going on there. Things have gotten so vile. This is just on a Republican Central Committee. Things are vile within that organization to an extent. There's this infighting and just all these kind of vitriol of what I haven't seen. I've been on this committee for 12 years. and I've seen a lot of stuff, because anytime you're on the inside, and I think this is the same thing if you're in a Democrat organization or whatever. I mean, there's always going to be a certain number of people who don't agree with each other, and we've got 48 people on this, this committee, so it increases the odds of disagreement. But the level of disagreement, the discord, the inability for them to really move forward is really disappointing. And I know there are not a lot of people that'll be left basically come November. I mean, we're already, our results are already baked into the cake, because when we have a primary, that's basically the general election for the Central Committee. So there's not going to be an election. The names are not going to be on the ballot in November. That's already happened. So the committee is already set for November. So that, or thereabouts, is when the term ends. So they'll go ahead and do that. But it's just, and there's several people who either left or were defeated, from my time, that will not be continuing on. And I look at this committee and I'm like, I just don't see, there isn't anything there that says I really want to be a part of this anymore. And that's really a shame. Now I have a better understanding of why people did not stick around for this committee. This is always one of those things that I kind of wondered about for many years, is that we had a lot of great people on the committee before I arrived, and even some during the time I initially was there, that either resigned or lost their races in ensuing years, and they did not stay active in the Republican politics. And I think it is a lot of this kind of thing that's been building up, but I think it's really gotten worse over time. And yes, please, I would love, maybe that'll be my parting shot to the Central Committee, will be, my final email will be like, please grow up or something.
Yeah. It's like, I think there's a whole, I think we're just at the start of it, but I think that people are starting to say, okay, we're looking to government and politics to solve problems that government and politics are not capable of solving, right? This whole, the big deal in Virginia yesterday, the high school kids walked out over Youngkin's thing about trans. Basically he said you got to tell parents if kids want to change their name and become the other gender or whatever. And that's a big fight. Okay. So, why are we, that's one of those things, like, you can just see, like, governments are putting themselves between kids and their families, right? In the case of the schools. Okay. And so, it takes a governor saying, okay, we're not going to allow that. And then the kids go nuts. It's like, what if you were doing heroin? What if you were having sex at school? Should parents be informed of that? I mean, obviously these things are cries for help, right? So where do we draw the line on what we tell parents, right? So, I mean, you can't, the idea, well, the parents might not like it. Well, they're not going to like it, if you tell them about doing drugs or having sex at school either, right? It's just what it is. So, but I think we're spending a lot of, I think the society is starting to say, some of these problems we need to solve ourselves, and it needs to be parents, parents over the kids, communities working together, taking these outside, top-down administrative, edicts out of things and making it where, it's people cooperating to reach common goals, because politics was supposed to be that, right? But we've gotten to a point where it's not working, right? And I think that, that's a frustration with, all the office holders and so forth. And, I almost feel for the Democrats, like they're trying to explain, Biden, the outside forces are doing all this to the economy and the price of energy and all this stuff, right? Because he can't, he doesn't have the tools to make all these, to wipe all this away, right? He's trying to do a thing and it causes these other problems, and he can't make it not cause the problems. So, I mean, so why is government in the energy business anyway? Why don't we just let energy be in the energy business anyway? And then you would get results that made sense, that will stand the test of time. Instead, we're episodic with something we need constantly, right? We have episodic policy. Right now, we're like, no pipelines, no energy exploration. The next, the last president was, all energy all the time, energy independence, right? So, it's not like we stop needing energy because Joe Biden says we don't need to drill for oil anymore, right? We still need it, right? So you're looking to government for a solution. Government can't or won't provide. So, I mean, I think that's, we got to get to the problem where either government rouses itself to actually speak to the challenges, or we look outside of government to solve a lot of big societal problems.
All right. So you brought up the school thing. I did want to ask you about that. So how about your kids' school? I mean, was that one of the walkout
There was
schools?
one there. My daughter went. She'd never been to a protest, and she kind of wanted to see what was up. She said there was 2 or 3 speakers. It seemed arranged ahead of time who they would be. There was some speculation that there were some Democrats involved in like lining up there's a gay straight alliance at her school, and there's also she called it something Pride Incorporated or something kind of movement, and she said that movement it was sort of under the rubric of them. And so she goes and she heard it and she goes, it descended into sloganeering really quickly, like, trans rights or human rights. And it's like, well, she's like, that's not the issue. That's not what's being argued over here. So, it's like, she sort of got her, when you go to protest, here's what you get, right? And it was really interesting to watch her sort of, like disillusionment, like coming down into her face, right? As she realized what she had done, what she had seen.
Yeah. So I have some opinions about these kind of protests in general. I mean, my kids went through that. I mean, in the sense of that when they were in high school, at least the 2 oldest, I'm not sure about the youngest, but at least the 2 oldest, there was a period of time there was about, the war in Iraq or something. There were these kind of anti-war type of things that happened. So, look, there's free speech. You have the right to free speech. I just have a problem here where it's being done during the school day. Okay, you want to have a protest? Do it on a weekend, or do it in the evening. Do it after this. Do not take away educational teaching hours, to do this. The other thing is, my kids would have, easily pointed out, and I think we see this in a lot of cases.
Well, I want to say this. So apparently what South Lakes did, where she goes to school, spoke to that objection. There's something called SS period, which who knows? But like, you go back to a class that you have already been to that day, and you can like straighten up with the teacher. I need to, know more about how to work problem number 4 or whatever. Right. But otherwise, that's time you can work on homework and stuff like that. So, and it was 20 minutes. The whole thing was, out of your class, back to your class within 20 minutes of time that you would not be in a classroom anyway.
And so our kids, what they saw, and I'm sure this happens with every protest by, the students all around the country, no matter what the issue is that a lot of them attend because it's like, I get out of class. Okay. Their thinking is, this is look, teenagers are teenagers, right? It's not that it's not that a whole lot of them are politically active or really care about the particular issue. It's just like, oh, good. We're not going to be in class for a little while. Anything to get out of a class, they will participate in, or at least show faint support for,
Yeah.
and it's, I don't know.
And it's some of it too is just like, learning what's going on at these things. Like, what is activism? What is protest? How, how do I make my voice heard if I want to get my voice heard and so forth.
Yeah. So, but once again, I mean, to me, the protests, you do this out of the school daytime. I mean, what happens here is that this becomes, it looks like an organized effort where all these schools basically acquiesced and said, sure, we'll allow X amount of time at every school to do this.
Right.
And kind of under a social justice rubric of informing how to teach the students or whatever. But that's really not their role in this particular thing.
Right. But they encourage activism. I mean, they say that, yeah, we want to teach them to be activists. We want to teach them to protest. You know what? Get those NAEP scores up. Let's do, reading, writing, arithmetic. We come across stuff that they, I'm not saying be against it, right? The students, but your government, right? You're a public school. You are the government as far as those kids are concerned. So be neutral, right? Be neutral to the idea. Be neutral to the concept. Don't be whipping it. Who are you going to? There was an abortion. Was it abortion protest last year, or the year before? And one of the teachers asked my daughter why she didn't go, And she got an earful. My daughter, like, I don't buy that, man. So you know what I'm saying. So why is a teacher asking that? Why are they sort of like whipping the boat on it? So that's its own. That's its own.
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, see, that's another factor. Part of it too is that there's because in this sense during the school day, there's a lot more peer pressure. I mean, to me, it's one thing. If they attend the thing on the evening after classes are done, the teachers are doing it on their own time or whatever they want to participate. They do it on a weekend. I think there's less peer pressure for that, but they also, the left is really smart when they do these protests, right? It's because by co-opting part of the school day, you have your captive audience for the most part, because the peer pressure kind of rolls around. We got all these factors going on there, get out of class, all these things. Look, I mean, I think it's fine. I mean, I said free speech, this is fine. They have the right to go and do those things. But I think the place, location, the timing, is not within the school day. And as you said, the government, this looks like, once again, the government is saying, this is what you should believe, and you need to believe this. And if you don't believe this, we want to know why. Well, excuse me, where's my freedom of expression and my opportunity? And, for someone like MK and any student who thinks like MK or Marty or whatever, they're like, well, look, I was raised this way. Here's my moral compass. Here are my beliefs. And this is what I do. And I have my
when
own.
are we going to have my protest? Oh, well, those ideas are divisive. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Let's see the other side try to do this and get the same cooperation by the school. Not going to happen.
Right. There is a Muslim student group at her school, but when she tried to start a Catholic one, they said no.
Yeah, I mean,
what's the basis?
Very interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting. Another thing about this hurricane too is, and I threw this in here because I saw this clip this morning, and I just thought it was so funny because there's Don Lemon interviewing a guy from NOAA, and they're talking about the hurricane, and he tried repeatedly to talk about climate change and how, trying to pinpoint this guy down and says, is this because of climate change, kind of thing like this. And this guy who's an acting director, he was just like, we can talk about climate change later. And, Lemon tries to circle back and go back to that. And he says, you can't tie climate change to any one event. But this is something that, I think, if I was able to capture the chyrons on CNN, because I definitely saw one, the other day at the gym, climate induced storm, right? Climate change induced storm. I mean, come on.
Okay. If that's true, okay, because here's the thing about it. I read that thing. I didn't watch it, but I read the script of it, right, of what happened there. And he said, Don Lemon, he's like, these storms are intensifying. And the guy's like, well, you can't, whether they're intensifying or not is not the question. First, the thing he should say is, there's really no evidence that they're intensifying. I mean, this particular one may be intense, right? But there's no all the hurricanes are getting worse. That's not true, right? In fact, they appear to be getting milder. Same with thunderstorms and tornadoes, which is its own kind of interesting thing, right? Maybe, maybe another degree or two is not a bad thing if it calms down the storms. But, so first of all, he should have challenged that fact, because that's not true. And they get to say that, and people are like, oh, wow, it's making the storms worse, but you don't know, no one comes along and says, well, actually the data shows this is not true.
Right. And the thing too is that, in the years that we've had where, where they were saying, the hurricane season was milder than forecast or whatever, that gets very short play, because that does not go back to the narrative that the media is working very hard to craft, which is, we're seeing intensifying storms, whether or not it's hurricanes, it's these big thunderstorms that you're getting, more flooding, whatever these kinds of things are. And every time, these stories are all about climate changes. Climate change is causing this. Humans are causing this, these things to happen. So watch out, because it's, they are worked very hard to make, this perception a reality in people's minds, right? I mean, people are thinking about it. And what do you remember? Yeah, you're going to remember the big storm. If you were in a hurricane of Ian's proportions, you're going to remember that. And then you're going, you see the news and you were going to believe that climate change had everything to do with why, the roof got blown off your house. But, there are storms. This is an ebb and a flow. There are storms that come and storms that go. Now, from my own standpoint in general, when I see these, it's like, I try, as I look at potential places that if I would ever move, it's like I've had this long held belief, and this was even before the storms got worse, supposedly, that I'm staying out of Tornado Alley. I'm staying out of the West now because I think that the drought is a big problem out West and causing a lot of issues there. And, I definitely don't want to have anything to do with a hurricane. People in Florida, they love it and that's fine. You can do it. But I just need to see one of these storms to say, I can live elsewhere. I got, I actually feel very fine and safe in my home, and so I'll deal with the crappy politics and the high taxes because I think I can stay in one piece a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, these things, they shut your town down. Your life is not the same for a long time. So
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, and there's just one thing after another. I mean, whether or not it's this or, like the big water crisis in Jackson, Mississippi, this is, they've got a problem there. I mean, and this was corruption was really at the root of that more than anything else.
Of the Jackson. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they took in all this money, but they didn't really spend it where they should have been able to fix this problem and they didn't.
Right.
And it causes a lot of grief for people, but they're really not pointing at that Democrat, the mayor in there. They're pointing at a lot of other politicians that, that they can, but it's all of these things that are going on around here. And, when I didn't have it here on the list, but when you're talking, it struck me today as you're talking about, this government intervention and things like this, for example, I mean, yet another thing here is Joe Biden, his big hunger fight, right? The government is going to, this food insecurity, which has now become the big buzzword, right? Food insecurity. But, since the pandemic, the government is spending a ton more money. I mean, 10, 20, 30, 40, billion dollars more on SNAP, on the food assistance, on all these other programs. They put a lot of programs into effect because of the pandemic, for which they haven't let go of yet, right? Even though the pandemic is over. But now they're going to build on all of that and try to throw more money at the problem. But that's not the problem. It's not that the government has got to spend more money on this problem, right?
Right. So, yeah, well, water system is a local problem, right? That's not Washington's problem to fix. It's Jackson's problem to fix. So the other thing is, okay, in the 2016 election, you go back and look at the counties / parishes that Hillary carried. She carried the I-20 corridor pretty steadily. Dallas, Shreveport, Monroe, the city of Monroe, Ouachita Parish, Jackson, Vicksburg, Jackson, Birmingham. What's happening in those cities, with the exception of Birmingham, which is doing its own thing, right? Those cities are losing population. They're losing tax revenue. They're becoming less able to meet the needs. It's because of incompetent government. And, it's, people are just tired of it. They're just moving out. Like, Bossier City is, when I was growing up, Shreveport was about 4 times the size of Bossier City. Now it's about 1.5 times the population wise the size of Bossier City. Shreveport is 83 square miles. Bossier City is like, 41 or something. So it's much bigger. So, what's going on there? People are moving to Bossier City because it's not as incompetently governed as Shreveport, right? It makes more sense. So, that's one thing you have to look at those things. And those are little Democrat-run redoubts, right? The cities they take over do not fare well. I mean, name a city the Democrats run that actually does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem. And, my thing here with the food insecurity is that it's really not food insecurity that's the problem right now. Today, the problem is food inflation, right? And Biden did not, he doesn't want to address that because they don't know how to fix that. So they're thinking like, okay, we're going to talk about food insecurity and we're just going to throw more money at the welfare programs and make more people dependent on the government because they basically expanded the roles. I mean, college students and whatnot. There could be a point in time when I would qualify for that, for heaven's sakes,
Yeah.
because this vast government safety net that they want to expand, this is not teaching Americans how to live independently and how to do things. It is just putting them,
tell them how to quit quietly or quiet quit or whatever it is they call it. That's what it's telling them. It's like, you don't really need to work. You can get enough in government benefits to survive without working. If you don't care about traveling and, ever like having nice stuff or going places, then, you don't really need to work. You can just live off the government.
Right. And so this is also, creating another problem, with the inflation issue, and, tight labor market, but, a lot of people not wanting to do certain jobs and just a lot of different things. But as people see their portfolios go down, or they see, and they're not really, paychecks are really not keeping up with inflation, with food inflation. So, now a lot of people are panicking, they're looking at hardship withdrawals from their 401ks. They're just, now they're feeling less secure. But part of this was built on this whole thing where the government threw so much money at people during the pandemic that they boosted up their savings, and it gave people this false sense that, oh yeah, I'm going to be fine. I can retire. I can quit. And I don't, once again, and to your point, I don't have to work anymore or have to work very little. Right. But now the rubber's meeting the road a little bit because we've got this ridiculous inflation problem, 40-year highs, and it's just stubbornly high, and it doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. And then you have all these people who thought, oh, the government gave me all this money, so I'm fine. And now they're thinking like, oh, now what am I doing? And they're panicking. And now they're looking maybe they're going to get part of the safety net with this expansion of this food insecurity program, this welfare programs by the government, but making more people dependent in the end on the government. I mean, it's created a total mess. I mean, look, Democrats love the welfare state, right? I mean, that it's kind of like captive voters for them, but that's not what helps America be America going forward.
Right. That's right. They have a big problem with that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's another one where, maybe it's time to look at poverty alleviation, look for solutions outside of government. I think privates probably would do a better job.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both feel. I think a lot of other friends of ours and things like that also feel that government solutions to these issues generally do not work. But if you're willing to let the private sector and some private things go on there, you might actually find some things that will happen. And it's not perfect because nothing is perfect. But you see where a little competition to the government or some other ideas, can improve things. I mean, charter schools or these types of things like that, teachers unions, right? Obviously teachers unions in general hate charter schools. They always wail, it's taking the money away from our kids. It's a reallocation, but it's also something that says, look, if your school performs well, you're going to be fine because kids
don't have anything to worry about.
But if you're an underperforming school because your teachers really don't care, and you have and the other issues that come along with it, then these private schools or these charter schools can possibly lift some of these kids up and help make them a success. And they don't. I think there was an editorial in the Wall Street Journal the other day because talking about the gubernatorial election in Arizona. I'm not crazy about Carrie Lake, but it is. She provides a stark contrast, at least on the education issue, to her opponent, who basically is, in the pocket of the teachers unions in Arizona, and they're trying to, put a dead stop to these alternative programs that Arizona has. These.
Arizona's gone full on. Money follows the kid,
right?
Which is, if you're, as we say, if you're a good school, that's good for you. You're going to get a lot of money. If you're a bad school, you better get fixed, right? Because parents are going to notice and they're going to have options. I will say this about that. The opponent, Carrie Lake's opponent, is one of the most appallingly bad statewide candidates I've ever seen. Her only answer to stuff is, well, we'll have meetings and discuss and work out a solution. It's like, that involves all the stakeholders and whatnot. It's like, this is the time when you say, if I'm governor, I will, the idea that will get put forward is this, right? It's not, I'm going to hold a lot of meetings and consult with, stakeholders, right? It's like, I have an idea of how to do this, right? Now, everyone understands you'll have to get some community backing and support and explain what you're doing before you do it. But, during a campaign, it's not a talking point to me to say, I'm going to, make sure that, we have a lot of meetings, right? I mean, you go look at her stuff. She's awful. She doesn't really have anything to say about anything except big government, big government, big government.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the interesting thing too, which the voters really need to understand too, is that actually this follow the money, this whole program in Arizona, they can educate those kids, cheaper than the public school system does. So that, it actually saves taxpayers money by doing this because they don't so, which we have seen before in a lot of cases where it's just that, public schools will spend, a lot of money per student to teach them, to educate them. And a lot of times these other schools, these other systems, vouchers and whatnot, actually wind up being far more effective. For less cost, you can actually wind up teaching your kids and improving your test scores and, doing a lot of other things. So Montgomery County is supposed to have one of the better public education systems in the country, theoretically, but
theoretically,
yeah, I say theoretically.
I'll tell you what. Here's one in Montgomery County. You take out the Whitman and Churchill clusters and see what you got. Right. You have a teetering, suspect school system.
Yeah, if you take out the kind of the wealthier schools, Whitman and Churchill, I'd say maybe even BCC and Wooten probably are in that general vicinity. They're all you see that's your brain drain and a lot of other things that go right there.
When I was at Montgomery Journal, we ran it. We just took out Whitman and Churchill, and it was below the state average after that.
I can imagine. Yeah. So, it's an interesting thing to watch and to see. All right. Lots of things that were not necessarily planned to go the way they were today, but this is what I love about the show is that we do what we need to do. I do want to bring it back and go back to the situation in Ukraine now. We're well past 7 months now. We've talked about that. The Russian mobilization, that has been a joke in the sense of protests in the streets, men fleeing the country, they're doing everything they can to keep the men in the country so they can bring them up and put them on the front lines to go get killed. They have they've had this annexation vote, which was a complete sham.
96-2. That's how you know it's real. That's right. And they're trying to force people to do it. I guess this morning it came out that embassies are being cleared out, including the U.S. embassy in Russia, because they're worried that the Russians may conscript American men there working at the embassy. Right? They're taking any guy and they're putting a gun in his hand and saying pointing them at Ukraine. Right? And there's the guy said the other day there's 3 or 4 days of training. Right? There's 2 or 3 days of getting you inducted, and then there's 3 to 5 maybe he said days of training. So you're in about when you join, when they get you and they get you signed up, you're about a week from being in Ukraine, right? And you're there until the mission ends, one way or the other for you. So and they have already lost, we lost 58,000 people in Vietnam over 2 decades, right? They've already lost 30,000 people in less than 8 months. So, that's a lot. They're losing a lot of people. And part of it is they're not trained. We were very trained. Our army, we killed in Vietnam. We inflicted 3.2 million casualties or something like that. And we had 58,000 ourselves, which means, we were really effective fighting force. We killed a lot more of them than they did of us. But in Russia, Russia's military, they're basically losing that calculation. They're losing a lot more soldiers than the other side. The Russians have always fought like this. In World War II, we lost 155,000 They lost 22 million, right? So they're willing to take the heat. They're willing to throw guys into the maw and get them killed, right, to achieve aims. You don't put it past them. They don't care that these numbers are what they are. What they do care about is that they are running out of people, material, will to fight, support for the war at home, right? These things are starting to dry up on Putin, and it's unclear what he does to get out of it. There's also this matter of the pipeline. Was this on here? Did we talk about this? So,
no.
In the Baltic Sea, there's something called the Nord Stream pipeline, and it's basically two pipelines. One is crude, and the other one is gas. And so the ones that are gas that there were sabotaged in the ocean where it goes, what is it? The Baltic Sea, right? So there's natural gas flowing up into the Baltic Sea, right? And then it's not clear who did it. There's a lot of people who think the U.S. is responsible for sabotaging it. Others think it's Russia. I don't understand why Russia would do it, because they're basically shooting the hostage, right? The Russia can hold the prospect of reopening Nord Stream to exact concessions from the Germans and whoever else is getting a little cold this winter and likes to solve the heat problem easily. So now that's not an option for them, which means that all of Europe is about to get hoisted on its green energy petard, right? Either the green energy shows up big this winter and keeps Europe warm, or you're going to see a major rethink about green energy in Europe and elsewhere. We're already starting to see it. So, I don't think it will measure up. And I think people see the real hardship of this and what it really means to not have adequate energy supplies for a major modern economy. You're going to see a different, we're going to turn the page on green energy.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the popularity of the support for the war within Russia, I mean, the cracks had been forming for a while, but this mobilization call up, really exposed a lot more, because you start, you're taking family men and things like this, and so you have a lot more people are like, why? What is exactly the purpose here? What are we getting out of this? They continue to try to perpetuate the lie that, that there were these fascists and everything like that within Ukraine, and that they had to wipe them out and stuff like that. But most people have realized that that's just, it's like, where are they? It's like,
yeah. Why do we care? Like, let them do what they do.
At least, and then I thought it was interesting that the Orthodox Church got involved, and they're like, everybody who's fighting, your sins will be cleansed.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, really?
Y'all cleared that with a guy, and
yeah, we cleared that. Okay, so it's okay to go and fight for this lost cause, and if you happen to lose your life or whatever, your sins will be cleansed. You'll be fine.
Yeah, you'll be in good shape. So that's sort of like, what the Muslims say. You get your 72 virgins, and
right.
So it's okay to go blow yourself up because it'll just get better for you. But I don't know. I don't know how many Russians are going to buy that. You've told them for 80 years, 90 years, don't believe in God. Now it's like, God will save you. It'll be good. I don't know.
So I was kind of wondering what you thought about all the protests in Iran after that young woman died within police custody. This
woman who fell and collapsed herself while
yeah. I mean,
amazing how the health problems just really seem to mount when you get arrested by the secret police.
Right. She was 21 or 22 years old. I mean, I think 41 people have died in these protests, but they've become quite violent. And Iran's been they're trying to do that. It sounds a little bit like China to me. Cut off the internet. Try to keep it from exploding outside of Iran and try to contain it. But it's pretty hard. That's
it's getting around the world, and it's women's rights, right? So it's kind of hard for the leftist governments of the world to come down on Iran's side here. Meanwhile, of course, the Biden administration, unconstrained by this, is trying to negotiate a deal with the Iranians, right? This is, which enshrines the mullahs as the powers that be for an indefinite period, right? I mean, this is the second time. Remember, during the Obama administration, there was the Orange Revolution. There was a chance to to chip away at the mullah's sovereignty then. And Obama turned away from it, showed him a cold shoulder, right? And Biden is looking to do that again. I don't understand that. I was like, the Iranians, I mean, your State Department, Joe, calls Iran the number one state sponsor of terrorism in the world. So why wouldn't you, jump at the chance to help people who are trying to make change there, right? And it's, it's fair change. There's no popular sovereignty there. The people do not want women killed over their hijab fitting correctly, right? This is not, reflective of democratic will. Why are we for it? Why are we letting these guys, why aren't we turning up pressure on them to get the results that we have a chance to achieve?
That's right. So I guess I should say back to our fascism. I don't even know if I'm saying her name right. If her first name is Georgia or not.
Oh yeah,
Meloni. So she wins election in Italy, which was somewhat expected. I mean, they kind of predicted that she was going to win and that she'd have a coalition as well. But boy, I mean, the liberals and the left are just totally freaked out of this, this whole thing, and she hasn't taken office yet or anything like this, but it has just been this whole, everybody's commenting on this and they're worried about the situation in Italy, but Italy's got a lot of problems, economic problems. And so anyway, I don't know what your thoughts.
Well, I mean, if you watch what she says, she is we're going to take care of Italy and Italians first. And we're not going to worry about the European common market and, the European Parliament and all this stuff. We're going to worry about taking care of our people, getting our economy back running, our country back running. She says she's guided by, God and love of Italy. So she sounds an awful lot like a certain guy used to be president here in a lot of ways, which I think is part of what freaks them out, is they're seeing this, actual, nationalism, actual Westphalian assertion of national sovereignty. And and these guys want, squishy or no borders, World Economic Forum, you will own nothing and like it type of stuff. And these are people saying, no, I'm standing up for people owning and controlling their own destinies and so forth. And, that's not what Europe certainly wants. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think she'd better make sure that the security folks get paid, because I believe that she will be in danger.
Yeah, I mean, Italy, the politics in Italy are just, I mean, they're all over they switch. I mean, things happen. It tends to be very unstable, with the way things go.
They've had 50 something governments since World War II,
Yeah, it's really unstable. I mean, they do have deep economic problems. Can she solve it? I don't know. But it is true that anybody who has this kind of the whiff of Trump, kind of thing like this in Europe and Central South America, that type of thing, that's always a freak out by the left every time anybody like that tries to run for office. If they win, it's even worse. You hear even more stuff. But it's just
Bolsonaro. They're all getting ready to get upset
Bolsonaro,
about that. Orban,
Yeah, it is just, it's going to happen. I mean, so we'll see there. It was interesting to see that Liz Truss in the UK. She's got a really big hill to climb. I mean, they'll have to have an election by 2024, I think it is, but they're having economic problems. It looks like she's trying to invoke some kind of Reaganomics and things like that, and trying to be yet another, kind of inherit the mantle of Margaret Thatcher to a degree. But can she do it under these conditions? I don't know. It's going to take a lot. I mean, I love the idea that you cut taxes. I mean, this was a problem with Boris Johnson, is that he would talk about some of these things, but on the other hand, he would also let taxes. He would go ahead and increase taxes and do things that were not very conservative at all. So
right. She seems really committed. She seems
she does.
Serious tax cutter, regulation cutter. She really believes government's too big. So I don't know, there's momentum for this around the world, right? There are people starting to say that's not where to look for solutions. It'll be interesting to see, the two strong women in Europe now saying, It's not old dudes saying this. It's women who are running for office and winning national elections by saying, hey, government needs to get out of our thing. It's not solving the problems.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll have to kind of wait and see how this all, plays out. Inflation, supply chain issues definitely going to be a problem. So we have this spending bill, and Joe Manchin had been pushing really hard for his permitting overhaul. Even had an editorial, I guess it was actually in Wall Street Journal, which I did not read. But now he's told Schumer that to withdraw it. Democrats, he had some Democrats that were coming out against it. We had the Republicans who weren't, in favor of it. There was just no path for him on this one. But there were a lot of problems with this permitting bill anyway.
There were some problems with it. It doesn't go far enough to, Manchin tried to, first of all, do not ever vote for something, on the promise of something getting voted on later, right? They don't, those promises are worth nothing. No, neither side, we're both bad about it. You better get your vote. You better get your leverage up front, because once it passes, they don't remember what they said they would do. Okay. So he tried, he made the 8,000th trip up the mountain on that one, and he got the same result everybody else has gotten, which is they don't keep their promise. He's trying to get it. So, he has a big problem with that Mountain Valley pipeline, West Virginia to New England. And, they want to have a continuing resolution until December 16th. So I think the Republicans have said, how about if you're going to do a CR till the end of the year, so these lame duck people can't come back and pass a bunch of spending when they're on their way out the door, right? So which I agree with. So I don't know, like where all that's headed, but we're we don't want to shut down. I guess Republicans don't want to shut down the government. So they're going to come up with something that gets it over the finish line, because they're just not quite sure how that will play in an election. And, with the election coming up, and it looks like, they're in pretty good shape now if they don't screw it up. So, I don't know how long it will go, but I don't, Manchin bought a pig in a poke, and that's what's happening. So, we will get permitting reform. We might not get it right now, but we will get it, because without it, we're not going to be able to meet America's energy needs.
Yeah, but I was reading that one of the things, with this bill too, though, is just that it had to do with, I guess, transmission lines for electricity or whatever. And, it's kind of, the state has jurisdiction over certain things, and then the federal, FERC, Regulatory Commission, Energy Regulatory Commission they also have a say-so in this, and it's been this way for a long, long time. And apparently
FERC is in the hands of radical leftist environmentalists right now. That's part of the problem. Is FERC has said, as they tried to make a rule saying that all pipelines, to build and open a pipeline, you had to account for the greenhouse gas emissions at every stage of the pipeline, even the parts that you're not responsible for, which would make the projects, unaffordable, undoable, right? So they did that. Manchin called them out on it and said, you can't just do this to us. So they've backed off for now. But right now, the Mountain Valley pipeline can't be approved under the rule they tried to enact there. The problem is like New England doesn't have resources. They don't have oil and gas, right? They have to get it from somewhere else. And it's about to be pretty cool up there. It's already kind of cool here. And their access to energy is not right now sufficient. And if it doesn't get fixed in the next month or so, you're going to be getting a lot of political pressure from our friends up to the north.
Yeah.
Right? They have a big, immediate, real problem with this, pipeline situation.
Yeah. And you were talking before about, energy and everything like this. We have Biden out here with this whole electrification kind of thing, and we continue to hear more and more stories, at least in terms of the automobile manufacturers and others, we're going more electric. They're doing this. There was this within the last, couple of weeks, I think Hertz. So they're going to put 175,000 EVs into their fleet. So
Mhm.
I will say my first thought about it, having rented cars in the past, was just like, okay, so we rent when they get those cars, exactly where are they charging them?
Right.
Where are the renters charging them? And then I thought, it's like, so what's the deal when you rent a car? Are you supposed to bring it back? You have the option to bring
Fully
it back
charged.
fully charged or not charged. Do you get charged if it's not fully charged when you return the car?
Right.
That's a little bit weird to me right there. But then I just saw the story that I guess they're striking a deal with BP, which has got a big, solar energy or whatever type of thing, that to where they will cooperatively have all these charging stations, I guess at BP stations, which is fine, except BP stations are not necessarily everywhere in the United States,
Right.
right? I mean, like a lot of other oil companies, the oil gas stations, some of them tend to be in just certain parts of the country. You
Right.
see you see more whatever in one part, Shell's here versus there or whatever. I mean, if you go into, I think about this, I don't know why I mentioned Shell, but I guess I'm heading off to Utah, and if you go into Utah, I don't even remember the last time I saw a Shell station in Utah.
Right.
Okay. You will find Chevron and some others in there, but that, and Sinclair is kind of big over there. But
Right. You don't see Sinclair here,
yeah,
right?
you don't
You
see
see a lot more
Sinclair here.
Chevron out west than you do
Yeah,
here.
so it's a variable, kind of thing that goes on where my daughter lives in, out in the suburbs of Evansville. Evansville itself, major gas stations. You see a few marathons, but it's actually a lot of most people I think are getting their gas through Costco, Sam's, Casey's General Store, and a couple of other things that I can't remember what the heck the names were, but I think they're local or they're regional. So, they're not major chains, but that type of thing. So you see that, and I see, I just can see the problem. And the idea with this, I saw this, also saw in conjunction with this, that I guess the states have now been given the green light to go ahead and start building the charging stations, for which are supposed to have like one for every 50 miles on the interstate. Okay. I don't know. I mean, you've been on the roads a heck of a lot, and I have to drive, I've driven between here to Evansville, Indiana, which requires some interstate driving. And I'm thinking like, okay, so I drive through West Virginia. I'm still trying to think of exactly every 50 miles. I'm thinking like, exactly how's that going to work out? Exactly where is that supposed to be placed? So you have a hard time finding a gas station every 50 miles sometimes. When you're going through the mountains of West Virginia. So
That's right.
this does not seem plausible, that you can actually pull this thing off. It's a big pipe dream that the liberal left, the greenies have been selling to everybody, thinking, oh yeah, we go EV is just great. It's going to do, plus the last thing I'm going to say too is that I didn't know about this. Maybe you've heard about this, but I also saw one other thing where people are complaining about the windmills, because they get kind of windmill flicker in their homes. They're
Mhm.
close enough they live that as the windmill goes along, those blades actually wipe out the sun to certain properties. So a lot of these properties just get like almost perpetual shade when the thing is running. They don't get sunlight that they would have had otherwise had those things not been there, and they don't like that either.
That's a good one. They also kill the birds that
Yeah,
that you talk about waste you can't get rid of. The waste you can't get rid of those turbines,
yeah.
right? That's stuff on them. You can't bury them. You can't throw them away. You can't do anything. That's just a horrible situation.
All right, so we need to wrap up today. So let's head into our final words, whatever, last 2 minutes, whatever we're calling it these days.
You have the baseball guys down here. I will speak to that real quick. Aaron Judge is trying to get to 61 or 62 home runs and break the Yankee team record. First of all, people say, "Oh, that's the real record," because Bonds and McGuire and all those guys were juiced. The pitchers were juiced too. And if baseball takes those records out of the record book, then I will quit worrying about those records. But right now, those are the records. And so he's not close to setting a record. He's 11. He's 13 behind Bonds, and last night he was walked 4 times. So it's unlikely he will catch up. On the other hand, a good season against good modern pitching. He's a free agent. He probably won't be a Yankee next year. So it'll be interesting to see like who steps up and gives him the bucks and what the Bucks look like for him. Albert Pujols has gotten to 700 home runs. When he was in the minors, he played for the Prince William Cannons for like 3 weeks, a month. It wasn't long where he moved on up to another level. But I remember going out there and it was dangerous, right? That guy hit the ball so hard and so solidly every time. You would just see the infielders kind of creep back a step or two. Not today. He was a real hitter and a real champion. And like he is, I guess you've read the things he's hit all the like memorable home run balls, the 600th home run, 500th home run, whatever. People bring him the ball and he signs it and lets them keep it. It's like, it's for the fans, you guys enjoy the ball, right? So he has very few of those artifacts. He gives them away and he shares them with the fans. One of the neatest baseball stories I want to get to before we go away is that Joey Votto, who was also a Prince William Cannon, plays for the Cincinnati Reds, has been playing for the Reds for a long time. He's hurt. He's out for the rest of the year. So he has been going to the games and walking around the stadium and sitting with fans and talking to fans and, sharing stuff and telling jokes and, leading the wave and all this kind of stuff, and just like gone out and, he's like made a thing of like sitting with kids that were at the games and having fun talking to the kids. And I think that's just a really great thing. I think those kids will be Cincinnati Reds fans and Joey Votto fans forever because of that.
All right. So my comments on this is like, Judge has got to put about 8 more games or thereabouts.
Yeah. They're behind a couple games, maybe a couple more than that.
Yeah. So he's got a handful of games here yet to do this. Walking 4 times is not going to help him get there. Obviously, it seems like pitchers are now kind of like, I'm not sure I don't know if I want to go.
Not happening on my watch.
Yeah, right. They don't want to be remembered for that. I mean, so he gets to 61. He ties Maris's Yankee record, and I guess that's the American League record, right?
61, I guess it is. Yeah,
I think this is what it is. So if he gets to 61, he ties it. If he gets to 62, he becomes the American League home run record leader. I mean, catching bonds. Look, as far as those records by the Juice guys, they're the records. Okay. I mean, I don't like that era of baseball and a lot of the things that happened there, but it happened. And Major League Baseball is, they have it in the record books, so therefore the records. Okay, so everybody's just got to live with that, as fact. Okay, and those are the things that you got to go through, and and we go through different periods of time in sports. There's stuff that happens, and that's it. But it'll be not. I'm rooting for Judge, and it's interesting to see that Maris's family has been at virtually all the games lately, waiting for him to tie the record. And that it's kind of a neat thing to see there. I mean, you mentioned Joey Votto going around doing things that also sparked this thing about. Did you see this thing about Eli Manning going undercover?
Yeah, I saw that.
That was hilarious. I mean, I love it when these guys just go ahead and just do these ordinary things and all of that. You mentioned, Pujols and the whole deal with his home run balls. Henry Aaron, when he hit number 700. He didn't request it back, right? And he didn't request it back. So, there are people that are really just true to the game, that are just, and I think this is where, Albert Pujols, what a remarkable end to his career. He needed 21 home runs this year and he did it.
Yeah.
Age 42.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, this is, he resurrected his career really in the final year here. And it just had this, what a way to go out. There's been
he hit something like 60 of those home runs against the Astros. He hit more home runs against the Astros than any single player has hit against any single team in Major League history. All us Astro fans are going to be there at his Hall of Fame induction to make sure that he can't ever come back to action.
Yeah, because I was going to say, there was talk, there was speculation, and people kept saying, it's like, will he come back next year if he doesn't get to 700? And Pujols had been saying, no. But if you're at 699, you would think like, oh, I get a few more at bats until I did it. But he's been pretty prodigious this year, and congratulations to Albert Pujols. We love these guys. They're baseball in their supreme. So,
That's
all
right.
right. I said we got to wrap this up, and we do. Thanks, everyone, for joining us again today. Please, as always, stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And God bless America. We will not be doing it next week because I'll be in Utah, and it's just too difficult with the time change and my location. But we'll work something out for the following week. And so we'll see you to then. Hope you miss us in the meantime. All right. Thanks, everyone.